for the job, and they said, fake it till you make it. You'll get through this. You're smart and all that stuff. And so that's what I did, And you can't do that with Jesus. If your heart's not right with Christ, it's not right with Christ. If you're not in submission to the authority of God, then you're not in the submission to the authority of God. And these guys who should have been in submission to the authority of God, well, they were playing the game. They were kind of putting up a sign or a show or whatever you would call it, but they weren't genuine. They weren't being right there. They're kind of doing their own deal. Jesus knew their heart, and I want to, let me say this. He knew more than just their heart. When the Bible talks about the time of the flood, what does it say about the people? The thoughts of their heart. It's like the thoughts that make your thoughts. The deeper down, the root level of stuff that's way down underneath. That stuff. God knows what triggers your desire to do the wrong thing or to do the right thing. Deep down, stuff that you don't even know about you. And you think, well, how did I get here? Well, you don't have time to figure that out. It's like there's this succession of things happening in your life got you to the point where you thought this and you decided that and you went this route. But God knows the very first moment that sin began to grow in your life. You and I, we don't have that opportunity, but he sees that in these guys. And so there's nothing hidden from God, nothing hidden from Jesus. He's not going to be going, I just wonder how this is. And these men who were challenging him didn't have the proper heart for that. Now, in the passage, and I'm just going to touch on this briefly, and we'll come back to it in a minute, but Jesus tells them a parable. And they're going to believe something about it, and there's a reason he did. I talked to a rabbi a few years back, and we were discussing things, and I was trying to convince him of Jesus. And sometimes that's a pointless endeavor, because this guy's heard it all, I tried to take him to Isaiah 53, and he said the craziest thing to me. He said, we know the prophet Isaiah, but we don't really teach him. Like, well, how do you do that, man? I mean, that's one of your prophets, and the prophet Isaiah wasn't like a small guy. This guy had an impact, and he made the big differences. So, how would we go there? Well, that was just his mindset. So when I say that, I want to say this. The reference point I'm going to take you back to is in Isaiah, what Jesus would teach when he would go into the temple. So it's not like they just kind of avoided it. But it may be that once you hit a certain level of legality inside of Judaism, that you start saying, well, let's not look at all the stuff. Christianity is bad about that too, right? We teach the entire counsel of God, but then you see them isolate down to just a few books or a few areas of the Bible and say, well, we don't really teach that, or we don't believe that about the Bible. But they still say they or pretend like they do. So Jesus makes a reference, and this is where we're going to know the vineyard part holds together. Isaiah chapter 5 and verse 1, he says this, let me sing for my beloved my love song concerning his vineyard. My beloved had a vineyard on a very fertile hill. He dug it and cleared it of stones and planted it with choice vines. He built a watchtower in the midst of it. He hewed out a wine vat in it, and he looked for it to yield grapes, but it yielded wild grapes. And now, O inhabitants of Jerusalem and men of Judah, judge between me and my vineyard. What more was there to do for my vineyard that I have not done in it? When I looked for it to yield grapes, why did it yield wild grapes? And now I will tell you what I will do to my vineyard. I will remove its hedge, and it shall be devoured. I will break down its wall, and it shall be trampled down. I will make it a waste. It shall not be pruned, and briars and thorns shall grow up. I will also command the clouds that they rain no more upon it. The Lord of hosts is, behold, bloodshed for righteousness. Behold, an outcry. Culturally speaking, they would have understood when he started giving the parable about the vineyard, he was talking specifically about them. I mean, just from a cultural standpoint, the dots are going to be there, the connections are made. But now that we have that established, let's start cruising back through our passage. I felt compelled to establish that, so bear with me. When the chief priests and the scribes and the elders came to Jesus, they had the intent to corner him, accuse him, and ultimately get rid of him. Action that he was making to the people, it wasn't as easy as just saying, let's make this guy get out of town, but we got to kill him. Now, it's kind of a hard